Why is it that nobody who stood by while kids were abused ever comes forward and says they knew or apologizes that they did not protect the kids? Or why is it they never apologize when amidst all the abuse, they refuse to believe you when you told them what was happening? They told you you were a bad kid, and they told you not to tell anyone, and then they told you you were crazy, and they let it keep happening. It's very rare that parents who abuse or parents who allow the abuse ever apologize. And yet, it's very common that these same parents hope to have a relationship with the kids that they betrayed. And it's common for the adult children to want a relationship too. But how? How do you go ahead and have a relationship with them? So my letter today is from a woman I'll call Kelly, and she writes, "Hi, Anna. I'm 51 and suffered from some pretty major abuse as a kid. My relationship with my mother is very complicated, and I'm hoping you can give me some insight on where and how to set boundaries with her." All right, I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to go through and circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's going on here. My parents split when I was a toddler, and my mother remarried when I was 6. My stepfather turned out to be a monster, abusive in all areas, and smart enough not to do most of it when she was paying attention. He was also an alcoholic with 4 grown kids, one of whom died in a drunk driving accident when I was 15. I'm 100% sure he abused all his biological children too. He passed away a few years ago, and my mom talks about him like he was some kind of saint, simply because he kept a roof over our heads and food on the table. The one time she even vaguely acknowledged the abuse, I was told that I should forgive and forget. Not bloody likely, says Kelly. My mother sees me as the hysterical, irresponsible child and thinks I lie a lot. I don't. I tried to tell her as a kid what was going on, and she didn't want to hear it, in part because it triggered her own unresolved trauma and because it threatened her security. She lived as a single mother with 2 small kids for a few years, just barely scraping by. She says to me, "I know you get it." Yep. And he was solidly middle class and able to financially support us, as well as being willing to take on 2 kids. Pretty sure she was terrified of winding up a single mother again. When I was 19, I confronted my stepfather, which led to my mother first dragging us to family therapy. And Kelly says, nope, they wanted me to talk about the abuse with him in the room. They know now not to do that. And then the family kicked me out of the house because they say I nearly broke up her marriage. Here's the thing. My mother actually does put effort in some ways. She can be incredibly thoughtful. Her love language is finding out something that you're interested in and educating herself on it. I know where she got the idea that I was irresponsible and so forth. I was a real mess in my 20s. Undiagnosed bipolar, untreated trauma, and neurodivergence. Fun mix, she said. And yes, irresponsible, but almost 30 years later, in her mind, I haven't changed. Yeah. I love my mother, and I know she loves me as best she's able. I'd like to be able to have a less fraught relationship with her, but I need to set boundaries, and I don't know that she can hear, let alone honor those boundaries. It's difficult to discuss without her getting upset, because she does not want to believe that my stepfather was not who she thought he was. She's 82, and I don't want to upset her to the point of a heart attack or something. I've just started trauma therapy, and I'm hoping against hope that the EMDR process helps to diffuse some of my anger and frustration at her behavior. I've also discussed this to some degree with the therapist, but I would be very interested to hear your thoughts about the situation because basically I need her to not talk about my stepfather when I'm around, especially if she's going to talk him up and talk about how wonderful he was. I would very much like to have a less fraught relationship with her, but I don't know whether it's possible. Anna, can you help? If it comes down to writing her off, ultimately I will. I've walked away before, but I prefer to try and build rather than destroy a relationship. Thank you so much for any guidance you can give. I hope I pared this down enough. All right, Kelly, I got you. All right, let's talk about this. I'm so sorry this happened to you. You certainly are in the right place with us. We understand. Let's see, you're 51 and you had major abuse from your stepfather and your mom basically didn't do anything. Yeah. So he has died, and You're pretty sure he abused his own biological kids, just like he abused you. And somehow your mom she's like, forgive and forget. She just cannot deal with it. I see this so often. I don't know. I like to think that I'm the sort of person who would never be so terrible as that. And it's so common that I have to wonder, like, is there some innate human thing where when you have been complicit in abuse of that magnitude against your own childhood, not necessarily doing it, but not stopping it or getting your child out of there, does it destroy something in you that's able to feel the shame or the guilt? Or do you have to shut down your ability to feel the shame and guilt about that in order to live with yourself? And that's what I assume, that something has died and that the apologies are so rare, like a sincere apology from somebody who really gets it, are so rare. That's why I use the word died and not like suppressed. But I'll be interested in the comments to hear what people say. Do you think when parents don't apologize, is that capacity for them to feel the pain of what they did, is it gone forever, or are they just not accessing it? And if anybody has gone through this and is on the other side, I'd be interested in your experience too. Like, how'd you do that? How did you face it? My mother sees me as hysterical, irresponsible child and thinks I lie a lot. Well, I guess that's exactly the adjectives you would need to assign to a kid who is saying, Mom, your husband is abusing me. You'd have to well, that's hysterical. It's not responsible. And it's a lie. You'd have to blame the kid for that. And because you were a kid, maybe part of you is still trying to reason with her about it and go, but it's not true, but I wasn't lying. But I'm not hysterical. It actually was very terrible. And I needed help. Yeah. She didn't want to hear it. It triggered her own unresolved trauma, and because it threatened her security. Yeah, she had some idea like she couldn't survive without this guy. Many of you will be familiar with they call it battered women's syndrome, but it's not just for women. But it's people who end up being abused, how they sort of lose their sense of agency. They don't feel like they could possibly live without the other person. Or often abusive people will say, you're nothing without me. You're never going to make it without me. But I don't know, aren't humans a mystery? Why are we so gullible to that message? Why isn't there some part of us that stands outside of it and goes, that can't be true, I've got to move on? And this is why, we really need each other. We need other people, because sometimes it's other people who can help reflect and go, what your partner is saying to you or doing is so bad. And I want you to know that if you can get out of there, you can stay with me and I will help you. And I don't know if there's a lot of alternatives to that. I know that going to shelters is a lifesaver, but it's hard. It's not the same as family. And that's why I think families where the relationships are broken down is exactly where abuse happens. Because I think people who have strong support outside their partnership don't stay in the partnership. So it doesn't go on. It doesn't turn into an abusive relationship at that level, or that so ongoing. So that's the thing. There's a big, huge atmospheric change that is needed. And so when we leave these bad situations, when we grow up from parents who did that to us, it's an imperative that we learn to have a community around us. And it's ironic because connecting with people is exactly what's hard for traumatized people. It's exactly what's hard. My new book is coming soon. It's called Connectability. But it's about how you build that up. I don't even say rebuild, because a lot of us never developed it. So we're not rebuilding something we used to have. We're trying to learn how to connect with people for the first time. It's a process that can take time. It can be kind of scary and intense sometimes, but it's totally important to all good things. Being connected with other people magnifies your strength to live your life. It brings sweetness into your life. And I know that there's a lot of people listening right now where you went through so much, you do not want to deal with people. And for whatever reason, you're listening to this video. And if you're not into people right now, that's okay. I'm not trying to drag you out from where you're feeling safe right now. But I would put out there that more healing is possible once you're ready to safely go hang out with people again in little tiny increments at a time. But anyway, that's how, Kelly, I read your mother's situation is her connection skills were terrible. And a lot of times it's the primary relationship, or AKA the sexual relationship, that's the only kind of connection that any of us have known. And so we hang on for dear life, even when it's gotten this bad, even when it's hurting the kids, perhaps permanently. But Kelly, I hope you're not hurt permanently. You've actually become better since then. You say you were a mess in your 20s. Who wasn't, my sister? And you had undiagnosed bipolar, untreated trauma, and neurodivergent. Yeah, that's a lot to deal with. And yet here you are, 30 years later, and you have changed. Your mother can't see it. She can't see it. If she had to recognize the breadth and beauty of your humanity, she'd have to face the horror of her neglect of you and, lack of her failure to keep you safe. I'm really sorry that happened. We all are, Kelly, we all are. And I know everybody in the comments is going to pour love for you. So many of us have been through it too. So you love your mom, and you know she loves you as best she's able. It's true. And that's a big-hearted thing for you. So this is what I think a lot of us find, is that though we're big-hearted and we love the people who hurt us or let us down, we can get triggered around them. So you can think of having a relationship with them as something that you do gingerly. You hang out with them, and then you keep the time short. You pack it with lots of little breaks so that you can get away. Like, I'll hang out with her for an hour, we'll eat lunch together, then I'm going to go run some errands, and then we'll hang out for a half an hour, and then I have to go make a phone call, and then I'm not going to spend the night there, even though it's Christmas, because, some reason that you can make up for that, just because it's the extended time that time together where the old behaviors can start to show and the old triggers start to unearth. They're like zombies coming up out of the soil, those old triggers, right? Where you get dysregulated and then your guard's not up. The invisible shield is fallen. And so it's appropriate to have a shield up with someone who has abused you, who you want to still have a loving relationship with. And there's a scenario where you take it slow enough that you can both have a shield and show a lot of love and receive some love. There's a way to do that. If you do it badly at first, you are exactly like all of us. I don't think it's ever possible to do it perfectly, but I commend you for wanting to have a loving relationship despite everything. And I encourage you to strengthen yourself to be able to handle it by taking it in a titrated, just a little at a time way, and then set yourself up with really good tools to process thoughts and feelings. Kids like you and me who were traumatized as children, it can cause an injury to our ability to process thoughts and feelings. So they back up. You end up with a whole bunch of thoughts and feelings there. It's just like so much. You can't really even hear yourself think. And that's why periods of quiet, go use your tools that you use to re-regulate and sort of decompress. Go do that so that you have space again. So every time you're approaching your mom and hanging out, you have some bandwidth to just sort of pay attention. It's like, she's doing pretty good right now. This is pleasant. Oh, here we go. She's bringing up that topic that always turns into an argument. And then you have little strategies to be like, yeah, I'm not going to go there, Mom. That's okay. We don't have to talk about that. It's like a classic attraction that we have after trauma. We want them to understand. We want to prove to them, look, I was a good kid and you were wrong. I'm telling you, it's very rare that conversation can actually go the way you would want it to go. You can always give it a try if you want, but it might cost you a few days of being exhausted and dysregulated and sad. That's all. But you can recover. You can, try it by trial and error. Just kind of see what works for you. See how you can have the satisfaction of some kind of connection with her without letting yourself just get trashed by the contact. And then as you're stronger, you can start to find graceful ways to just like take yourself out of the situation for a little chunk of time, a little chunk of time. And that way you can cope with it a little bit better. So those are my suggestions for how to have a relationship with somebody. I think you did a marvelous time explaining to her. And I heard that you're willing to write her off ultimately. And I think knowing that you're willing to do that if it becomes bad enough in a weird way it's like freedom. It means that you don't have to fight to the death to save the situation. You don't have to abandon yourself to save the situation. You also don't have to make any permanent decisions. And I think this is a nice thing to remember, is that you can say, for today or for this week or for this month or this year, I'm going to step away from the relationship. You may not even announce it to them because that's just going to cause, faff, right? So you can make a short-term decision and say, I'll decide tomorrow how I want to do tomorrow. And that can be very relaxing too. I think one of the hardest things is When we're hurt, we want to go, that's it, I'm never going to do this again. And then soon comes that like abandonment feeling of like, oh, I've got to somehow run back. You don't have to either end everything forever or run back. You can just kind of take distance for a while and keep playing it by ear. Isn't that lovely? So I think the strongest tool that I would ever pack for such a trip, to spend time with such a person, is my daily practice. I'd have paper and pen in my bag, ready to go, and I would build in excuses of why I have to go off and do something else so that I could write and meditate, and just kind of take my nervous system and give it a nice relax, a nice nervous system rest and massage, which is what the daily practice basically functions as. So that whatever's going to happen, you're kind of in your good place. You feel strong. You're in touch with who you really are. You know how that always gets lost in these situations. You remember who you really are. You remember your connection to your life today, and you stay connected. And so I wish you well on this journey. I hope it goes really well. If anybody wants to learn the daily practice techniques, it's easy. It doesn't take long. And once you learn them, you can come join free Zoom calls with me every 2 weeks and practice them and ask questions and get together and meet me. And I would love to meet you. It starts when you take the free course. You can do that right there. And I will see you very soon.